Engines of growth in social impact. For a social impact intervention to work, it must find a successful value hypothesis and impact hypothesis, but it also must have a successful growth hypothesis. And so this post will summarize the ways which you can scale a social impact project based on the book by Ann Mei Chang, Lean Impact. Philanthropic funding can help validate an idea, and it can de-risk it. It helps take an idea that is high risk to invest in, and the philanthropic funding can demonstrate which ideas are most successful in their value, growth, and impact hypotheses. However, philanthropic funding is often insufficient to properly scale an idea to an intervention to the size that it needs to be scaled if it wants to actually address and meet the need of the most number of people who are affected by a condition. And so this is where one of these proposed 8 engines of growth for social impact come in. Ann Mei references Kevin Starr, who sees 2 critical questions in determining the ability to scale. The first is, who are the doers to scale? And the second is, who are the payers at scale? And so the doers may include your organization, lots of nonprofits, lots of businesses, or the government. And the payers might include customers, government taxation, private philanthropy, and foreign aid. However, Ann Mei is skeptical that the last 2, that private philanthropy and that foreign aid, can truly function at scale, because even the largest of foreign aid and philanthropy is often unable to meet these needs. One should not wait until they are at scale, though, to determine if their growth hypothesis is correct. An organization can test their growth hypothesis early on, and they can figure out, can the doers do, and can and will the payers pay? So for instance, if the growth hypothesis for a local business is a replication model, they need to test to make sure that their model is easy enough to replicate. And if the payer hypothesis is that the local government will pay, this too needs to be validated. And if that validation experiment fails, perhaps an alternative engine of growth is required, or perhaps a different intervention needs to be pursued, which is more amenable to scaling. And so these are 8 engines of growth and social impact as outlined by Ann Mei Chang. The first is a market-driven, and this approach works well at scale because the customer and the founder can be the same person. The second is voluntary contributions. So examples might be nonprofit crowdfunding sites that make it possible to scale voluntary contributions. The third is cross-subsidy. And so in this case, you have profits from one area of the organization fund the activities in another area of the organization, such as selling one version of a product at a higher price point in developed countries and at a lower price point in developing countries, or having the surgeries of high-paying patients cover the cost of low-paying patients. Number 4 is replication model, and this needs to be an easy and cheap solution that can be duplicated. Now, traditionally, replication for organizations meant franchise, but you could actually take the concept of franchising down to the idea of micro-franchising. So this is really pre-packaging a single product to replicate. Number 5 is commoditization, and this is the ability to drive down cost by increasing manufacturing capacity. And so by choosing to avoid proprietary standards, for instance, in the design of a water purifier, PATH made it possible for any cartridge to enter that market and build cartridges and filters that could fit into the water purifier. Whereas if they had gone with proprietary standards, it would be much harder to commoditize. Number 6 is government funding. Obviously, the government is the largest spender in areas such as education and healthcare. Number 7 is government adoption. And so this is a little bit different. It's using existing government infrastructure as a way to scale an intervention. And an example which was given in the text was a in-school deworming program that made it possible to treat children for under 50 cents a child and achieve benefits that were over 50 times the program's cost. And so it didn't use new infrastructure, but it used the existing government adoption to distribute the product and service. And number 8 is big donors. And the problem is that this often doesn't work because the funds aren't large enough to be mobilized to meet the true global need. But there is the exception that sometimes if the intervention can be relatively inexpensively scaled without increasing costs, you might be able to achieve a large impact with a large donor. That might be, for instance, the idea of a technology-based solution. If you think of something like Khan Academy or an online tutor, which can be easily scaled. Anyway, I recommend reading the full book, Clean Impact, if you're either a donor, a philanthropic donor, or a granting agency, or the recipient of funds which are used for achieving social projects which try to address needs.